This is it. These are the people on People magazine. The Hiltons, the Gates, the Trumps. These are the people you go to college to become, doctors and lawyers. This is the gray area. They're not by any means unsuccessful, but they haven't succeeded by society's definition. And what they are proud of is having played by the rules of the game. They have worked hard. They're not a millionaire. They're not a doctor with a lot of prestige and status. There are a couple of elementary school teachers who've worked hard at what they've done. They've got a couple of kids themselves doing, they're not geniuses or anything, but they're doing pretty well in school. They got their own home. They got a little savings for retirement. They've worked their butt off. This is one of the broad backbones of any society, the lower middle class. But they haven't succeeded by society's definition. But they have put the time and effort in because they do have the self-discipline. It just hasn't paid off quite as well. Now, are they doing well? Yes. Are they doing as well as here? Obviously not. And that's the key and why they're proud of being ritualists in a very positive way. There is one place in which this ritualism becomes negative, and that is when this hard work doesn't pay off. When playing by the rules of the game doesn't deliver the security they think they deserve, and they've experienced dramatic downward mobility. Fascism. This group, according to the research in Germany, was the mass basis of the fascist party. If they have played by the rule and worked hard, they shouldn't end up poor. But during a depression, a lot of lower middle class people will, and they're angry and resentful about that. And therefore, vulnerable to appeals of ultra right-wing politicians who say, how come you're having problems? Scapegoat. Germany was Jews. But frankly, today we find an awful lot of downwardly mobile Americans. We've talked about what's happened, and we'll talk about the working class here. We've seen a lot of downwardly mobile Americans who've seen their jobs go to China, replaced by a robot, not working at GM anymore, but instead at Walmart. Are some of these people angry and resentful about that? Yes, they have. And what are they being told by a politician like Trump? Why are you suffering? Because of the immigrants coming in, taking your jobs. Very common. As long as you don't get that downward mobility, this is the broad background of society. They tend to be politically conservative. They work hard. They play by the rules of the game. They have very traditional family structures, etc. All right, working class, 30 to 40%, not the same size as the lower middle class. Sometimes these two are combined into the middle class. Sometimes all three of these are combined into the middle class. Working class, jobs that do not require a college degree. Nurse assistant, data entry clerk, secretary. And it used to be we had a large number, we still do, of things like truck driver, steel worker, crane operator, welder, carpenter, bricklayer, electrician, plumber. These are all working class jobs. In the past, they were unionized and made enough money they could support a kind of middle class lifestyle, even though they were society's order takers. Even if you had a good union. My uncle was in what's called the Longshoremen's Union, International Longshoremen's Warehouses Union, ILWU. Longshoremen right now, if you've got a unionized job, there's still a few of them around. Not many, but there are a few. They make over $100,000 a year. Loading and unloading those cargo containers on ships. Mainly what they're doing is operating machinery. The crane comes down, lifts the container off the ship. But do they still take orders? They still have to punch a clock. Is still someone on their rear end telling them when to do, what to do? Yeah. And that's with a union, and more of our jobs have fewer and fewer unions, as we've already talked about, putting this class in economic jeopardy as well. So typically, they get some college. They may go to a community college, but the dividing line is the BA degree, which is what I emphasized in class last time. If there's any practical impact from what I'm talking to you guys, get that bachelor's degree, because this class is getting hammered. Without a union to represent them, they're at Walmart, and their income is plummeting. Adult-centered family. This is a very traditional family structure. Who is raising the kids? Mom. In a working class family, typically, who makes more money, the male or the female? Male. Dad's a carpenter, mom is a secretary. Dad's a plumber, mom is a clerk at the Walmart. Who's making much more money? Dad is. Now, if this family experiences divorce, mom is very likely, at least for a period of time, to end up as poor. Adult-centered families revolving around the adults, and particularly the father. Dad dispensing discipline, but otherwise than that, very little involved in the raising of children. This kind of family structure, an awful lot revolves around taking orders. Corporal discipline, very common amongst working class families. You find very few upper middle class families spanking their children. Anybody take any basic psychology? Developmental psych? Even a unit on it? No? Nobody? Usually I have at least one person. Yeah. According to most psychologists, spanking kids a very good idea. No, it's not. No, it's not a very good way of raising children. Kids spanked tend to develop what's called an external locus of control, fancy psychology term. It just means kids who are spanked are afraid of getting caught and get the crap beaten out of them. No, I'm not exaggerating. It's painful. They avoid that. Therefore, and the problem here, according to psychology, is that they will avoid the behavior they're being punished for, but they will also avoid the source of the pain, the parent inflicting that pain. And they will tend to avoid the parent versus a middle-class parent who tends to use emotional Billy, look at your sister. Young man, look how she's crying. Mommy is so disappointed in you. Mommy just crawled into his psyche, guilt-tripping him, making him feel bad, so that he's developing an internal locus of control. A sense that I'm responsible, I shouldn't have done that, versus I don't want to get caught, because Dad is going to beat the crap out of me if I do. Working class family structure. That external locus of control is exactly what you need when you are going to be taking orders from somebody else. Over here, these are families being raised for self-discipline. All right, socially conservative. These people tend to have very traditional family structures. They don't like gays, that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the economy, they tend to be pretty liberal about things like unions, Medicare, Social Security, these government programs that help people in their old age or if they don't have enough money, because increasingly they don't as the unions disappear. All right, and then finally, lower class. About 15% of the population, according to the latest data, live beneath the poverty line in the United States. But let's be clear about this. Poverty is not because you don't work. In some cases it is, but not necessarily so. Can you be poor but work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I mean at really hard jobs? Picking up trash, taking care of other people's kids, washing dishes, flipping burgers. Can you work full-time at these minimum wage jobs and still be poor? If particularly you've got a family. If you are a single person working a minimum wage job, that'll keep you just perched barely above the poverty line. You just add one child to that, and now that family is beneath that poverty line. I'll talk about the line here in just a second. It's the lack of steady work, the lack of work that can support a family. That's the key here. It's not the poor don't work. Some don't. But the key is the fact the work available to these people simply will not keep them in a acceptable lifestyle. Less than high school education. If you don't even have a high school education, you're a dropout. What are you going to be doing? Now, I'm not leading the band, I'm flipping burgers. I'm putting the mint on people's pillow when I make the bed for them. I'm coming in and cleaning their house. I'm taking care of their kids. And these are jobs, actually, when they do exist, are much more available to which gender? Men or women? Women. Yeah. The service work is much more available to women than for men. Yeah.
So then, with all the things that are going on with the $15 minimum wage graph that's going on in New York, is there a way we can cut that out for the lower class where we can help them while also helping the economic society?
So you said you're looking for a way better than a minimum wage increase to 15. What would that look like?
Yeah.
Sure. It's called unions. Yeah. At that point, if you had stronger unions, then you wouldn't have to do that kind of raise across the board. Yeah, the minimum wage has been argued by a number of people is not an efficient a way of raising our lower class. It raises some people, it will. It definitely does. It does help. However, does it also help some teenagers who are just bringing in extra money while mommy and daddy are making them work during summers? Yeah. Yeah. So it's not less efficient. There's a lot of ways around that. There's this, I don't want to get too technical. There's something called the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a way of giving money back to people who are actually working. It's currently the most important anti-poverty program in the country, but I'm not testing on that stuff. Yeah, there are ways around that minimum wage, but let's be honest. In terms of what's politically possible right now, increasing the minimum wage is one of the few things we can do, especially with the Congress. You can raise the minimum wage at a local level. San Diego. Was there an attempt to raise the minimum wage in San Diego? Yeah. It was rolled back by the mayor. It'll be up for a vote in the city of San Diego come November. It won't go up to 15, it'll go up to 13 over a period of time. But we also know that the minimum wage currently in terms of its buying power is at the lowest level it's been in probably a quarter of a century. If we simply had adjusted the minimum wage for what its real buying power was in 1968, it would be about $11 to $12 an hour. That's just adjusted for inflation.
I'm curious to know how the military interacts with class structures.
Yeah. Military, you take a look at income of military, mostly it's upper middle class, working class. Even some folks in the military, formal earnings are so low as to qualify them in some cases for at least being, kind of the upper part of poverty. But they're also getting benefits that aren't being counted. This is a problem with our measure of poverty. I'll talk about it in just a second. It doesn't take into account what's called in-kind benefits. When you get uniforms, when the military provides housing for you, that's not income. It does not get counted towards your income. And that's the problem. So you have to take a look at income for some low-level military folks, especially if they have a kid and the mom or the dad is not working. They may actually be in poverty, but they're getting housing benefits. They're getting food at reduced prices. They're getting uniforms and clothing.